Hello, there's nothing quite like Eurovision to bring me back from the dead. The Eurovision Netflix film came out a few days ago and I really wanted to make a video about it and do my little review. I don't know, it's been a while since something has really excited me, and you know, when you've got that motivation, you just take it and run with it. So here's this video. So for those of you who haven't watched the Eurovision film yet, it's called Eurovision Song Contest, the Story of Fire Saga. There will be spoilers in my little review, so if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it before you watch this, or if you don't mind getting spoiled, continue watching this. So first I want to begin with what my initial reaction was when I found out that there was going to be a Eurovision movie and that it was going to be starring some big stars like Will Ferrell, Rachel McAdams and Demi Lovato. So I think I first found out like maybe a year ago or something. There was like talks about a Eurovision movie, and the first thing I thought was, oh no, they're going to make it mainstream and Americanize it, and in doing so kind of like make fun of Eurovision. And then I saw that Demi Lovato was going to be part of it and I was like, wow, it's going to be a pretty big movie if they're getting a lot of these big stars. I didn't really think too much about it until maybe like towards its release date, and I was like actually getting really excited after watching the trailer. I was like, like I don't know how to feel about it, but I'm gonna watch it. And so it's out there now. It's trending #1 in a lot of countries. It's #1 in Australia, and I watched it the day after it came out. So let's get into it. What did I think about the plot? The plot itself is pretty much your typical comedic love story. You have Will Ferrell playing an Icelandic guy named Lars and Rachel McAdams playing a Icelandic woman named Sigrid. They are childhood friends and they have this dream of becoming Eurovision stars. You have the girl who's like totally in love with the guy. The guy is too stupid to really understand or do anything about it. He messes up and then he has to kind of redeem himself. And that's the typical comedic love story, and it's just set on the Eurovision stage, I suppose. I didn't mind the plot. I thought it was kind of like fun to watch how it would unfold. It was kind of like you know what's gonna happen because it's so cliche. I like that they played off a lot of Icelandic traditions and culture, the story about the elves and Vikings and things like that. I think it was nice that they chose a Nordic country that wasn't, you know, your really typical famous Eurovision countries like Sweden. Getting into my favorite moments of the film, there was 3 most distinct moments. My first favorite moment was at the Icelandic after party that was on the boat. Sigrid and Lars went there, but then the boat blows up and then you just see Demi Lovato, who plays Katiana, the popular choice to represent Iceland, and her arm just falls in front of Lars and Sigrid. I just thought that was so completely random that I just like burst out laughing. I was like, oh my god, this movie is ridiculous. Another favorite scene is similar to that one, but towards the end of the film when Lars is back in Iceland and he's visiting the elves before he goes back to the Eurovision Song Contest. One of the governors of Iceland, I think the character is trying to kill Lars because they don't want Iceland to win the Eurovision Song Contest because it'll cost too much money to host. And so he's trying to kill Lars, and then all of a sudden there's like a knife in the back of the governor, and you just have a scene where it's little elves' houses and then the door just kind of like slams shut. I don't know why. That was also really funny to me, in the same way that it was like completely random and like absurd. I love that scene. And of course, the most pivotal moment of the film was the song-along. They do a mashup of a lot of popular mainstream songs and some Eurovision songs, and we get to see surprise guest cameos from some of our favorite Eurovision celebrities, I suppose. For me, it was like seeing Alexander Rybak and his violin, which really just, I screamed, I squealed. We also saw Loreen, Netta, Eleanor, who else did we see? John Lundvik, and a lot of prominent Eurovision celebrities. So that was really nice to see them. So moving on to some questionable moments in the film. The UK hosting Eurovision. I don't think that would ever happen in our current times, but I like that they made the UK the host, because it was kind of like, yeah, as if that'll ever happen. I like to justify it by thinking maybe Australia won the year before and we're hosting it in the UK. Another questionable part was the voting sequence for the semi-final, which made no complete sense. It doesn't happen like that. Now, the soundtrack for the film, of course, it's the Eurovision Song Contest. What do we think of the songs? I personally liked most of the songs. I think they took everything that is good about Eurovision songs and amplified it 1,000 times and made it as cliche and cringe as possible. My personal favorite song was, I think it's everyone's favorite song, is Husavik. When I was listening to it, I was like, no way, that's Rachel McAdams singing. That's got to be like an actual singer. And then I found out it was actually Molly Sandén, who is a very talented Swedish artist. I highly recommend you guys go check out her original stuff. If you are learning Swedish, she has some songs in Swedish, so that's been a huge help for how I've been learning Swedish, is just listening to Swedish music. Husavik is, I feel like, the encapsulates so much that is good about Eurovision. You know, it's like a ballad. It sounds very Disney-esque, yes, but it incorporates like the Icelandic native language, which I love personally, and it's got that high-pitched ending that Molly does impeccably well. It's not a Eurovision Song Contest without a note that is off the charts and very long, so they nailed that. I think the only song that I was kind of like was Lion of Love, which was performed by the Russian delegation. Oh my god. Not my favorite, but can appreciate it for what it is. Honorable mention to the song that was performed by the Swedish delegation. I think it was called Coolin' with the Homies instead of Chilling with the Homies. I really like how they played on a lot of like your cliche lyrics and cliche words. Final thoughts. I think this film was a much needed, light-hearted relief from what has been 2020 so far. I mean, with the current health pandemic and Eurovision being cancelled and quarantine and riots and rallies going on around the world, I think it was essential to have something like this that really kind of just helps distract you for a moment in time from all the shit stuff that's going on in the world. Before I actually watched the Eurovision film, I was binge watching a series called When They See Us, which is based off the true story of the Central Park Five, or the Exonerable Five. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend. It's a bit depressing, and also knowing that it's actually based off a true story, it really, like, I don't know, it affected me. I spent like a few hours just watching and researching about what happens in reality, and it was just like, damn, society really sucks, and it's no different now. So yeah, I think this was a nice movie to kind of just lift my spirits again. I think they did a really good job of taking everything that is good and cringy and amazing about Eurovision, and just taking all those aspects and stereotypes and amplifying it so that it was just kind of like really an amplified version of what Eurovision is, I guess. And maybe some people don't see Eurovision like that, but that's the beauty of Eurovision. It's kind of like you take what you want out of it. For some people, Eurovision is just a few nights of like good cheesy music. For some people, it's like their life, it's their passion. For some people, it's kind of like don't really care about it too much. It's kind of cringe. So I think they did a really good job of kind of portraying that. They had a few subtle digs at Russia, which I was just like, in the moment, I was like, did they really just do a dig at Russia? And yeah, it's a movie that I would revisit and watch again. I really enjoyed this movie. It made me feel good and warm and fuzzy inside. I feel like Eurovision fans might appreciate it more than people who have never heard of Eurovision. That being said, you know how Eurovision fans are. They're very passionate and they will go to the death defending their viewpoints. So maybe there are Eurovision fans out there who don't like this film. it really catered to the fans too, because there was a lot of guest appearances in there from the Eurovision community. We had Weeby blogs, Graham Norton was in there. So for me, I would give it like an 8 out of 10. I think I saw the reviews beforehand and it was like probably like 6 out of 10, which I can understand if you're coming into this movie with not knowing anything about Eurovision and just taking it as a comedic film that you're watching for the first time. So that's what I thought of the movie. I have been replaying Husavik on repeat on Spotify since the movie came out. I don't know, someone's got a like intervention. I don't know. So let me know what you guys thought of the movie, if you've watched it or if you're planning to watch it or if you're not planning to watch it. And yeah, thanks for listening to my TED Talk.